Problems, they're going to happen. I think we need to bone up on our problem solving skills. You ready for that? That's today at Live on Purpose TV. Problem solving skills. You're going to have problems, right? They show up all of the time. How are we going to solve these problems? Step number one, turn your brain on. Now, your brain's always on, but there's different parts of your brain that are responsible for different things. Did you know, for example, do you know what part of your brain is in charge of vision, eyesight? It's the back. It's the occipital lobe, or the visual cortex, which is located in the back of your head. That blew me away when I first learned it, because you'd think that it would be the part up here by your eyes, but it's not. All the visual information gets routed through the back of your brain. There's a little strip up on top. It's about the size of your thumb, just off to the side. You got one on the right, you got one on the left, called the motor cortex. This is the part of your brain that controls movement. Your arms and legs moving around, all of the muscular activity that happens up there in the motor cortex. Frontal cortex, the prefrontal area of your brain, that is in charge of logic, problem solving. Okay, problem solving happens up here in this part of the brain. There's another part that's located down toward the center and in the brain stem and up above that, kind of in the primitive part of your brain. It's called the limbic system. Family of structures that's responsible for keeping you alive, the fight or flight response. This is important because your brain loves you, doesn't want you to be eaten for lunch, for example. So if a big old bear comes after you wanting to take you down and have you for breakfast, that part of your brain is going to kick in with what we call the fight or flight response. That's a really quick overview of neurophysiology, maybe more than you expected to get this morning. But just take a look at these different parts of your brain for a minute. They're all responsible for different things. The part of your brain that you're going to need for problem solving is that prefrontal area, the frontal cortex up here behind your forehead, that's in charge of the logic and the reason and the rational thought. So when I say turn your brain on, that's the part that I mean. When we're in the fight or flight mode, we've actually got brain scan studies that prove this. There is a decrease in blood flow to the front part. Oh, what does that mean you're not doing? Thinking, at least not clearly, rationally, in a way that you can solve problems. We got to get that part of the brain engaged. So here's the first tip in effective problem solving. Turn your brain on. Don't respond until the adrenaline is gone. We have to calm that fight or flight response to get the blood flow redirected up front. So what that means is if you're upset about something, now's not the best time to try to solve that problem, because your brain is trying to get you to do one of two things, either fight or get the heck out of there. And for most problems that we're encountering, either one of those is going to make it worse. Think about a problem you're having in your marriage or in your family, for example. What if you were to fight? What if you were to just put up your dukes and just go for it? Yeah, it's going to make it worse, right? Okay, what if you just run away? What if you just bail? What if you just abandon ship? That's going to make it worse too. So we really need a different part of our brain to be active right now so that we can solve the problem. That's what I'm talking about. Get yourself calmed down. Take a walk. Do some focused breathing. Try some progressive relaxation or some meditation or some yoga or some exercise. Do something to get the brain chemistry turned back around so that you have access to the full resources you're going to need to get into this problem-solving mode. Now, once you got your brain turned on, there's a whole lot of things that we can do to solve the problem. First of all, you're in the part of your brain that's going to support it. Think of it kind of like the drop-down windows. You know, on a Windows menu here on your computer, you click on that item and it gives you a little drop-down menu of what you can select, right? When you're in that limbic system fight or flight response, you're only getting two options: fight or run away. Pick one of those. We already know either one of those is going to make it worse. What if we could get to a different menu where we click on that item and you got like 12 options, things that you can do to solve the problem? Now we're cooking, okay? We're going to turn on that part of your brain. Now that we got that part of your brain turned on, what are we going to do with it? I'll suggest a 4-part process. Now I put an acronym to this, POX. Doesn't even mean anything, but it'll help you to remember it. The P stands for problem. Let's identify as clearly as we can what is the problem. And in this step, it's very helpful to get clear that we're focusing on the problems, not the people. We are always going to value people over problems. So if you think a person is the problem, you need to do a little more thinking. Get past the person and see if you can clearly identify what is the problem. So instead of saying, well, my spouse is an idiot. Okay, no, think a little bit more. Get out of fight or flight. What is the problem? All right, the problem is that nobody's doing the dishes, and I expect my spouse to do the dishes, and the dishes aren't getting done. That's the problem. Okay, I know that's a silly example, but just take that as an example of what is the problem. And remember, it's not a person, it's a problem. We're going to put people before problems. Okay, what is the problem? That's P. Once we've clearly identified the problem, oh, and incidentally, I'd have to think for a minute to come up with the exact quote, but I remember Albert Einstein saying something about how if he has a problem to solve, he's going to spend, for example, 59 minutes out of an hour trying to clearly identify and articulate what that problem is, and then the last minute, he'll come up with a solution to it. The effort, and I'm making those numbers up, but you get where we're going with that. The effort that is required to actually think about and define the problem clearly will put you in a position to start seeing the solutions. Now let's move to O. Remember, POCS is the pattern that will follow. O stands for options. What are my options? You want to come up with at least 3 options. Why 3? Because usually when we think about a problem, we want to solve it with either this or that. Let's say that the problem is not getting paid enough at your job. Okay, maybe that's the problem you're trying to solve. You get yourself out of fight or flight mode, you get into thinking mode, you identify the problem. I'm not getting paid enough at my job, I want to have more money. You go to the options. Okay, I can either quit my job and look for a different job, or I can just keep working there. Do you see how that's an either or? That artificially restricts your options. You want to come up with at least 3. What if I were to say, okay, those 2 options need to have a third? Or how about this one? The 2 favorite options that I've picked aren't currently available to me. See, this is a way to invite your mind to expand that and to start thinking about other options. What's a third option? Once you come up with a third option, you can probably come up with a 4th or a 5th. Once you get a little list that has 3 or 4 options on it, then you can do this other strategy where you take your top 2, the top 2 that seem the most feasible to you, take those out of the equation and say, if these 2 were not available to me, what might I try? So this starts to open up those options. So let's go back to the job example for a minute. I can quit my job or I can just keep working at it. All right, instead of just quit my job and keep working at it, what else could I do? Well, I could have a conversation with my boss about a raise. I could consider doing some kind of side job on the side, or look into some kind of an investment opportunity, or get into real estate or multi-level marketing, or so that the options start to come up a little bit better. I could budget my money a little bit better. Okay, of all of those, what are your top 2? Well, I really like the idea of talking to my boss about a raise and maybe doing a little something on the side to raise some extra money. Okay, what if those 2 weren't available to you? Then what would you do? Well, maybe I would join a group that would help me to brainstorm new entrepreneurial ideas. Do you see? It's just opening up the options. Get at least 3, and then try to expand it from there. That's O. All right, now let's move to C. Every choice has a consequence. The better my choices, the better my consequences. That's a good general rule to remember. Every choice has a consequence. So for the options that you came up with in the previous step, now we're going to anticipate or predict or try to identify what are the consequences associated with each of those options. Take them separately. Look at them individually. If I were to choose to do this, what would be the consequences? So if I choose to talk to my boss about getting a raise, what would be the consequences to that choice? Oh, if I talk to my boss, he might say no. Well, yeah, that's a potential consequence. Would you be any worse off than you are? No, because you still don't have a raise right now. So thinking through the consequences helps you to not only better assess what your options are, but it helps you to start to dissipate some of the fears that come up about potential consequences. And a lot of times they're not as bad as we think they are. I'm remembering a scene from the movie Facing the Giants. And in this scene, a father was talking to his son about trying out for the football team. And the son was saying, "Oh, I don't think I'm going to try out." "Well, why not?" "Because I just might not make it." And this father said, "David, you're already not on the team. You can't be any more not on the team than you are right now." And it kind of opened up this possibility. Oh, okay, well, I guess the consequence of not making the team is something that I could handle since I'm already doing that. This process just helps to wrap your head around what those options are and what the potential impact could be on your life. After you've had a chance to assess the C, consequences, then you get to move on to the S part of this equation. S is simply the solution. The solution will be the option that in your estimation, in your evaluation of this, through this process, presents the most favorable consequences for you. It's simply a math problem at that point. What are my best options? Well, the ones that give me the best consequences. And then it's a lot easier to select a solution from among those. So problem-solving skills. Quick recap, turn your brain on. Get out of fight or flight mode. Don't respond until the adrenaline is gone. Once your brain is on, let's apply a POX formula, starting with problem. Identify the problem as clearly as you can. O, options. Brainstorm some options and come up with at least 3. At least 3. From the options, we move on to consequences, where we get to study the situation and figure out, try to predict or anticipate or define what those consequences would be for each of the options. And that leads us naturally to that solution. Simple. Simple and easy aren't the same thing. But as you practice this, you'll get better at it. I think when we handle it correctly, we can take on any problem. Not everybody believes that. Maybe you know someone who would really benefit from this episode. I hope you'd share it with them.